Good evening. Now that it's 6 o'clock, we'll officially call the City Council meeting to order. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Mayor Miller.
Here.
Alderpersons Clem.
Here.
McClanathan.
Here.
Ross.
Here.
Parker.
Here.
Busker.
Here.
Brashaw.
Here.
Keister.
Here.
And Berberet.
Here.
Okay, I'd like to first start out with welcoming the Cub Scout Troop 839. This evening joining us is Leader Mike Munda, along with a few of his gentlemen that are here tonight would be Connor, Joseph, Tyler, Alex, Neeland, and Charlie. And if I missed someone, I apologize. It would be our honor if this troop would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you could please all stand and join us as they come forward.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Our first order for this evening is the approval of the agenda. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Brashaw, seconded by Alderman Ross for the approval of the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Item number 2 is the approval of the minutes from the special meeting from December 10th, 2018, and the regular meeting from December 17th, 2018. Is there such a motion for approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Brashaw, seconded by Alderman Keister for the approval of the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Item number 3 is public comments. Are there any public comments signed up for this evening? No. None? Okay. Item number 4 is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is considered to be routine in nature and acted as one motion unless there's a member of the council that would like to have something removed for further discussion. Is there any council member that would like to have something for further discussion? Seeing none, the consent agenda consists of the approval to receive and place on file the minutes from the Historic Preservation Commission from October 16th, 2018, the Police Department report for October, November, and December 2018, Fire Department Incident and Loss Report for December and year-end stats for 2018, the Building Permit Report for December 2018, and the Semi-Annual Report from the Liquor Commission. Also included is the approval of the finance bills payable in the total of $925,605, and the payroll for pay period ending December 22nd, 2018, in the total of $566,354.03, and the approval of payroll for pay period ending January 5th, 2019, in the total of $576,165.24. Is there a motion for the approval of the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Keister. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the approval of the consent agenda?
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Berberet.
Aye.
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
And Busker.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. Next is the promotion from the Fire Department for District Chief Stekel.
Thank you, Mayor. We'd like to recognize now promoted District Chief Scott Stekel. Scott was hired December 1st, 1997, promoted to Lieutenant November of 2016, and to District Chief on the 4th of this month. His certifications include he's a certified paramedic, been through all of his firefighter training, Fire Officer 1 and 2. He's a fire instructor. He's also a hazardous materials technician, and he served for 15 years as our SCBA technician, which takes care of all of the breathing apparatus that we have. So we really do appreciate his service. He also is nationally certified from MSA to serve as a technician. He also served as a fire service peer fitness trainer and evaluator, and also serves on our city wellness and health and wellness committee as well. He's been a member of the Foreign Fire Board and also with the Honor Guard from 2005. He also received a life saving award and received a Valor and Life Safety Award. Also, he had attended Highland Community College and Western Illinois University. His wife, Linda, is here. If you could come up, and I'll allow you to. And Scott, here's your certificate of promotion.
Wow, this has been a long time coming. I'd like to take a moment of your time to thank Mayor Miller, Manager Crow, all the alderpersons, and my fellow employees in the city. I look forward to trying my best every day to be all in and see to it the people that I'm chosen to lead are the same. I want to thank Chief Miller and his staff. I've been mentored by a lot of people along the way, and I don't want to forget all of them. A few of them are here tonight. My wife Linda is here. My daughter Katie, she's over there with the camera, and her boyfriend Hank. My mother-in-law, Marianne Pontius, Dawn Pontius. Those two together, no one really has given more to Freeport Fire than those two. It's important to know that. Also, my wife Linda and my kids, Alex isn't here tonight, he's working for Fair Graham. However, you know, I've been on this job for 21 years and 7 of it, that gal there, she's run everything while I'm gone, and that's no small chore. Taking care of me and taking care of everything else at our house. So thank you, Linda. My brother Darren is here tonight, and I'm happy to see him here. I'm glad he's here for me. Without saying, my father's here tonight. Nobody gets anywhere in this life without their parents. My father Marvin is here tonight. My mother could not be here tonight. A year ago, she entered the nursing home. I went to see her before we came tonight. And everything we become usually is because of our parents. My parents always stressed to me that effort and attitude were all the different makers in the world and how you treated others. I joked with my mom earlier tonight that part of who I am and why I'm kind of a go-getter is because every time I would come home, my mother would meet me at the door and she would say, "Great Scott." And it was always followed up by, "What have you done now?" But I never stuck around to hear that, so it was more of an uplifting thing for me. But they have been very formative in who I've become, all these people. And lastly, my guys aren't here. There's 2 left, the 2 newest ones, but everybody's out working the job. And we take a little bit from everyone that we meet in our lives, and so too, and more importantly, in the fire service. And I thank those guys, even though they're out working and they can't be here. And again, I thank you all. Thank you.
Congratulations. Next, I'd just like to apologize to Pastor Steve. I totally forgot the invocation, so if you want to stick around and do that at the public comments at the end, I apologize. Item number 6 is the second reading of ordinance 2019-01. Madam Clerk, could you please read this for the record?
Renumbered from last year, 2018-57, an ordinance amending Title 8, Boards, Commissions, and Bureaus, adding Chapter 287 to the codified ordinances of the City of Freeport to provide removal, resignation of members.
Thank you. Nothing new on this council. It's exactly the way it was the last time we had spoken, so unless there's any other questions. Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the approval, the passage of ordinance 2019-01?
Brashaw,
Aye.
Keister,
Aye.
Berberay,
Aye.
Clem,
Aye.
McClanathan,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 7 is the second reading of ordinance 2019-02. Could you please read this?
Renumbered 2018-68, an ordinance of the City of Freeport authorizing the city to execute a promissory note evidencing a general obligation of the city in an amount not to exceed $136,000 for the purpose of financing the costs of demolition of certain properties within the city.
Thank you. Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. After the discussion from the last council meeting, I went forward and I've talked to both Kleckner as well as Fisher Excavating, and they both have agreed to move forward on, in fact, on the demolition without, with a promise that we will pay in the next fiscal year. In fact, they won't even bill us until the next fiscal year. We still have some procurement or some quitclaim deeds due on some of the properties, but they're ready to begin work on that with the understanding that because of that, we no longer require this money, and I recommend to council that we postpone indefinitely this ordinance.
Mayor,
Alderman McClanathan.
I'll make the motion in just a second. I'd just like to say thank you to Fisher and Kleckner and also John Zychek in regards to this, because it's an issue now that it's a positive development where we can continue to get these 16 done in this expedited manner. The neighbors won't have to worry about it over that period of time. We don't have to do this loan, but I also said thanks to John Zychek as well, because but for that offer for the loan, we wouldn't have been pushing it up here with the two contractors. But I appreciate the contractors' consideration, and so I'd make a motion to postpone indefinitely.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor made by Alderman McClanathan, seconded by Alderman Parker for postponement indefinitely of ordinance 2019-02. Is there any further discussion? And I would just like to reiterate what Alderman McClanathan said, and thankful for the generosity and offer. So Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Brashaw,
Aye.
Keister,
Aye.
Berberay,
Aye.
Clem,
Aye.
McClanathan,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
and Busker.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 8 is the second reading of ordinance 2019-03.
Renumbered 2018-69, an ordinance of the City of Freeport amending various provisions of the codified ordinances of the City of Freeport to eliminate the positions of Superintendent of Streets, Assistant Superintendent of Streets, and City Yards Clerk.
Thank you. Director Parker.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Before you is the second reading of the ordinance. This has both been covered in a cow as well as our last council meeting. This is kind of the fruit of the Public Works reorganization. In doing so, we have been able to eliminate a few positions due to right sizing, as well as kind of bringing everybody together as one general unit.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Brashaw.
thank you. Director, is everything been smoothed over with the union now? They're okay with this? Am I allowed to ask that?
Sure.
It has passed through the union and has been accepted.
So we have actually a signed agreement with the union representatives to move forward. Now, whether or not it's been done smoothly, we had to have two management meetings, actually 3, leading up to this to come to an agreement, much of which was approved. One was the buyout for one individual that we moved forward, and then the letters. I actually signed the letter out. We've had one resignation since this in positions since this has gone forward, but we've had those management meetings now with the union as we go forward.
Madam Mayor, follow up. Thank you. I apologize if I opened a hornet's nest or anything there. I just wanted to know if everything was okay with the union. I guess I should have worded that slightly differently. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Clem.
Has anybody had any meetings with the actual workers in this? We've lost a couple. We've got a whole bunch unhappy, which are going to happen when you do any kind of reorganization. We've got two unions or two separate entities that we're putting together that don't necessarily agree on what day it is. But I want to make sure, because I don't believe that it's been passed on to the personnel themselves what their future is, what things look like, what the jobs are going to be, what the benefits are that. I would agree with you that yes, the union has signed it, but that's one of my concerns. That's the only concern I have in this.
I have met with all of the foremen, so the three foremen of the different divisions, and I have had the discussions with them. A lot of what we couldn't tell at the time, the employees should have been brought on to them by the union itself. So there was kind of a disconnect between union members and union reps and the management itself on who should be telling the union members what information. So since then, things have been clearing up. I would say that there is some hesitation on the employees' side of not wanting to move, but I think a lot of that is it's always been done this way, and nobody has ever thought about doing it another way based off of the personnel that's been.
Now, the individual that was demoted out of this, I met personally with him, Tom, and I personally talked with him on that, with Director Carr present. So that the one that was demoted, that came from me.
Mayor,
Alderman Clanathan.
thank you. Moving forward, I know this has been discussed a bit before, but are you comfortable, both Manager Crow and the Director, are you both comfortable with the plans in place in regards to any cross-training and also furthermore ongoing safety training with our providers?
Absolutely, I see no issues moving forward.
I am as well. You know, one of the things that that we're also going to gain out of this is the reduction in the number of vehicles that we're having to buy and use as we go forward by co-locating them in the same place. But I am very confident that we are moving towards getting cross-training across. We are amending some of the job descriptions to add snow plowing into, so we have that. We're going to do that cross-training as well. The safety training that is required. As the council is aware, we had an ocean inspection and indicated that there was many of the OSHA trainings that were required that had not been done in 5 or 6 years at the department. Those are moving forward, so we can get the whole department trained up, and that's all occurring.
Mayor?
Alderman Clanathan.
Following up on that last point, I suppose it's connected, but also, that's something that we need to be catching up on, even if we weren't making any departmental changes. Those are recommendations that are apart from the structure, correct?
That's correct. We would have to be doing those anyway. We had not done. There had not been closed environment training in what?
Well, confined space.
Confined space. I couldn't find the word.
Training,
yeah.
You know, bloodborne pathogens, just to begin
And
with.
also, training had not been done for
Trenching and shoring.
Lockout, tagout, trip, slips, and falls. If we want to keep going, we could pretty much go on all night.
Mayor, can I follow up? Yeah. Thanks. I know you said this was quite a few year period of time since it had happened. On whose shoulders does that generally fall going forward? Because looking back, okay, if it was 5, 6, or even more years, okay. But whose shoulders does that fall on for the responsibility of making sure that these stay up to date going forward?
It's Tom and Dennis, and we're also have worked very closely with Illinois Public Risk Fund. They do come out and are doing training, and we're continuing to do training. We've also reestablished the safety committee which had not been in existence for almost 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Alderman Clem.
That's fine. Peter, thank you for the question. Because it's easy to say we're going to do this or it's going to do this, just as long as we say somebody's going to do this and somebody is going to do it. One thing I think we missed that came out first out in this is I haven't heard anybody mention anything about a team. And it sounds like we got a whole bunch of teams of eyes. And I think we really need to do something to pull these guys together, to work together and make an organization that will do everything that we want it to do. You know, when times get tough, there's cuts that have to be made. I think those were looked into very good as we came across along the line here, but it sounds like from what we hear a little bit, there's some discourse between union management and management here, so I surely hope that we can work that out better. That's all I'd like to say.
Well, if there's no further discussion, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the passage of Ordinance 2019-03?
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Berberay.
Aye.
Clem.
Aye.
McLanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
And Busker.
Aye.
That ordinance passes 8-0.
Thank you. Next is item number 9 is the second reading of Ordinance 2019-04.
Renumbered 2018-70, an ordinance of the City of Freeport amending Chapter 1052 of the City Code of Ordinances regarding the Water and Sewer Capital Improvement Fund.
Dennis, do you want to take this, or yeah, Manager Crowe?
I will take it. So this is the change, again, changing the ordinances. We've done a couple changes here. We've changed the Water and Sewer Infrastructure Fund to a Capital Improvement Fund, and then taken the last $8 that had been previously passed by council to put towards $2 towards a bond for road work, $4 for stormwater, and then $2 for water work. We have sat down with Fair Graham as we've looked at this going forward, and also Director Bucas was involved in this discussion to make sure that we can cover our expenses and bonds. The loans that we're setting up with our is through the Illinois EPA that has made it available for the forgiveness, has made this available to us to be able to do this. This will also jumpstart our working on the roads, and we've identified, and we've given you the initial presentation, and when we submit the capital plan to you in February, you will see those roads on the capital plan.
Any questions?
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
just one statement versus a question. I guess the only problem I have with this is the fact that when we did this increase to begin with, we sold it to the public to do in the water sewer stuff, and now we're redirecting the money to somewhere else. And I do have a bit of a problem with that. I mean, I understand the necessity for it and stuff, but, you know, we told the people we're going one way with it, now we're taking funds from that and sticking them in other places. What is this going to do with delaying, if any at all, the original purpose with the water system in Freeport that we sold this on to be able to fix?
So that's what as I explained earlier, we have looked very carefully that worked with Fairgram, looked at it from the financial director before we made this recommendation. We started looking at this recommendation six months ago, and we wanted to make sure that we could cover all of our requirements as we move forward, as well, so that we have in our plan as it currently is laid out, and as we know known requirements, and everybody was involved in this discussion as we move forward. We believe that this will address. Right now, we don't have enough money in the current stormwater to address the it's grown. We've identified one additional project. It's $4.8 million. And as you know, we have over $63 million in road work. And this will start working on getting some of those problems fixed. We do have enough money based upon what our collections are and what the current payback is on the IEPA loans to meet our requirements at least over the next 10 years.
Follow up, Mayor.
Alderman Keister.
So the original time frame we were talking about with replacing the water and sewer and the repairs we had will still be able to be met even though this money is being taken out?
That is correct. Correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor,
Alderman McClanathan.
one of the main reasons that we can still keep on that schedule in regards to the water mains is because the IEPA has increased the amount of loan forgiveness and we're able to stretch our dollars further. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Any other discussion?
Yes, if I could.
Yeah, Alderman McClan, or why do I keep calling you that? Alderman Clem.
One of the things I agree with Alderman Keister on the redirecting of the money, but the one big thing that I have to vote for this for is for two items in my ward. The first one being Woodside Drive being on that list, and the second one being the drainage on Navajo. Both Peter and I have large drainage issues in a couple places, and hopefully there can be some funds directed to that. That'll definitely make things better for people in those areas.
Mayor.
Alderman McClan.
Alderman Burberry, were you going to say something? Or, okay, all right. Just thinking. When we put in the total cumulative $24 increases over a 3-year period, a couple years ago, we were operating under a certain amount of facts and a certain dollar figure that we were told in regards to it, and a certain amount of loan forgiveness from the IEPA. That, as you may recall in the discussion, some didn't want to do the increase at all. Others wanted to do a little bit more. But we arrived at the end on the 888 in regards to that. And we did that based on the best information of what we had for what was due and owing going forward. However, it didn't address storm sewer whatsoever, and it certainly didn't address roads. And we know we've got over $60 million worth of road work, and the storm sewer is multiple millions, as well as Tom just mentioned too, some of the projects near and dear. So if we're going to, so we need to start addressing those anyway, the road and the storm sewer. The reason I feel so comfortable making this adjustment and feeling like it's not a bait and switch on the public is we had a financial, well, first of all, Manager Crow has indicated he's met with Fairgram, who also at Fairgram is, one of the employees is the prior director of water and sewer. They've worked through that, and we have a higher threshold of loan forgiveness. So the dollars stretch a little bit further. That this $24 a month is stretching a little bit further. At the end of the day, this allows us to meet every single obligation that we said we want to hit on those PowerPoint presentations of in excess of $200 million over 40 years. But instead of saying, okay, we're just going to raise additional taxes and additional fees, we're saying, look, because of the extra loan forgiveness, our dollars stretch from the $2 million being forgiven at, it was either a 1/4 or a 1/3%, to now being forgiven at 75%. So let's take those dollars that we were using on the infrastructure and apply it towards those needs that we have for storm sewer and capital. So I don't see it. Yes, it is a slight change on this last one, but we're meeting every single one of the obligations that we're talking about, and we're also keeping in the spirit of it in that we're meeting and addressing some infrastructure needs. So that's why I am comfortable with this moving forward. Plus, Tom said some of the projects that are highlighted are important projects, long-standing projects, projects that we've haven't had funds to handle for a long period of time.
Mayor.
Alderman Keister.
And I agree with what you're saying, but one question I have on that, and I don't know if anybody here can answer it, but you said there's been a change in the loan forgiveness. Now, once we get that loan, that is locked into place, and that's what we're going to get, or down the road something happens and they want to change that, they can change that. That, I guess, is what I'm wondering, because if we're gonna count on that to do this, is this locked in and solid, or can they change it down the road and drop it on us?
So the current program that is, it's supposed to be over the next 5 years, is a forgiveness, and more communities are doing this. They're doing to a $2 million loan, which can address 3 miles, roughly 3 miles of pipe in the ground, and $1.5 million, and I'm gonna rely, is forgivable.
Right, correct. On, you know, projects like that, but then also there's the other side project that deals with lead service.
Which is 100%
line replacement, which is 100%. So, yes, we would get 100% forgiveness. We would have some administrative cost, but if this is being provided, it's something to take advantage of, which then helps the dollars that we do collect to then be able to go and do our other projects quicker, or to, you know, yeah, to get them done quicker.
One final question, Mayor.
Alderman Keister.
So, you're saying now that we know it's gonna be locked in for at least 5 years, but we don't know anything of what's gonna happen to that beyond that 5 years?
I can't project, you have, so this was passed and signed in by the last administration over the next 5 years. You know, every 5 years, IEPA goes through looking at what they're going to do for forgiveness. Right now it's, and where this idea came out of was in a briefing that Director Bucas and I attended at IML, not this last year, but the year before last, when they said more and more communities across the state are doing these $2 million loans, which are forgivable up to $1.5 million to address infrastructure needs. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor,
Alderman McClenathan.
if 5 years down the road they change it, I'd encourage whoever the current council is at that time to examine the facts on the ground as they are now. But now, I'd encourage us to be fluid with the facts as they are for this period of time, and maximize our dollars rather than be concerned about what the hypothetical is maybe 5 years down the road. I'm confident that they can adjust and pivot if they need to. And frankly, if they increase it to a $4 million, 75% forgiveness at that time, great. I'd encourage them to see how they can maximize those dollars down the road at that time too.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Clem.
I'd agree with what Peter said in a lot fewer words and smaller, but I kid Peter about it. But one of the things you really have to look at, which is very true, if we keep doing the same thing the same way and the rules change, you know, we're sitting in a situation here now where the rules have changed and it's better off for us to do. We should move up and take advantage of that. There's no problem. We look at it and say, yeah, everything should be cast in stone, but any ordinance, basically, you can take a look at it how long later and turn around and rewrite it, you know, to where it's better for everybody. And this is obviously overall going to be better for everybody in the city of Freeport. And it will be on your bill next May. This May. This May, yeah. Sorry.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you please take the passage of ordinance 2019-04?
Brashaw,
Aye.
Keister,
No.
Berberay,
Aye.
Clem,
Aye.
McClenathan,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
and Busker.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-1.
Thank you. Item number 10 is the second reading of ordinance 2019-05.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
She's got to read first.
Renumbered from 2018-71. An ordinance granting a special use permit to allow a ground-mounted solar array in an R3 residential district at 1949 Bedford Drive in Freeport.
Director Zupkoff.
I'm just so excited to get started, Your Honor. Just a quick recap on this one for the second reading. It is, as the ordinance stated, 1949 Bedford Drive. That's a single-family residential lot zoned R3. They're seeking to install a ground mount solar array. The proposed development, as you might recall, would meet all the following conditions for a ground mount solar array development in R3. In my opinion, their application satisfies the city's standards for granting a special use permit as well as the required LaSalle-Sinclair factors for land use. The ZBA voted 3-0 with 2 abstentions to recommend approval of this special use, and the Planning Commission voted 6-2 to recommend approval. You might remember the 2 dissenting commissioners voted that way because they wanted to hear your interpretation on when you thought City Council special use was appropriate for ground mount solar.
Questions?
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Clem.
I guess somebody has to start this off. The only reason I will be opposed to this, okay, I agree with what you said, Andrew, and how we got where we got, but I also have 2 neighbors sitting next door to it say, I don't want that. I want to look at it. I think it looks terrible, and I think in going out and having a meeting and people coming forward and objecting to it is worth something. So that's the only reason I'll be opposed to it. You know, you look at the solar is a great thing. Don't have any problem with that whatsoever. But regardless of what math that you use for square footage, where you divide out solar panels and stick it in your backyard in a residential area, it's not really going to be the prettiest. And that's basically the reason I'm going to vote against it, is simply because of the fact of the neighbors objecting to it.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Mayor,
Alderman McClanathan?
regarding the comments that that director made regarding a couple of the abstentions, and council, perhaps you could help me out with this too. I believe our guidance, the general parameters of our guidance are given in the way that we laid out the special use, isn't it? And isn't that what they should be looking at? Is if they're wondering what's the council's guidance for what do we want on mounted solar, they should look at the parameters of the ordinance that we laid out.
And I had discussions with both members and that voted no on it since this, after I polled a group of the council members and basically and talked with them, and they understand that the guidance is if it's ground mounted solar and it meets the regulations, and then it does, and the Planning Commission also takes into consideration the objection on that. So I don't know if Andrew has anything else to add to that. So
No, nothing on the no votes, but Alderman, were you also asking about the abstentions at the ZBA meeting?
Whichever the ones that were looking for guidance.
Okay, yeah, that was the planning commissioners that voted no rather than the ZBA.
Okay.
and I talked to both of them in the last Planning Commission meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Alderman Burberry?
Thank you. Alderman Clem, I appreciate your thoughts about the neighbors, and that's not going to be very attractive. It says in here about reduction of home value. I don't know what that means or how much, but that if the logical extension of that were to happen in the town, there would be no solar panels whatsoever in Freeport. You'd have to go out into the country in order to do it, because everybody's going to have a home pretty much close to somebody else, unless it's a very rare exception around the community. That area happens to have a lot of open land behind the homes. It seems very appropriate compared to some. You wouldn't want one in my neighborhood or my backyard, because it would really be bad. So that's an observation. The logical extension would be it's never going to happen in Freeport then.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Clem?
If you take a look, the major thing, this was, we'll go back a little bit when we first started on this. When it came to solar in the backyard, we basically said, no, there's going to be problems with this, and to become a, what?
Soul Smart.
To become a Soul Smart community, we went back and negotiated with them of what would be put up or what would be allowed, okay? So many of us compromised what we thought was right to go ahead and become a Soul Smart community, okay? I still don't believe that Your statement of, well, that could be that way any place in town. No, that's not true, because if you put it in back of Sally's house, and the people at First Free Church, or the church out there that owns the property that could sit there and nobody objected, bingo, you got it up. But I just think it's wrong if two people would come forward and said, look, I don't want this in my backyard. I don't believe it should be there.
I respect them respecting your point of view.
Madam Mayor.
problem.
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. For the listening audience, we did hash over this at our last committee of the whole meeting in depth also. I am 100% for clean renewable energy source, and I have hoped we would have more use of solar energy in our beautiful city of Freeport. Yes, it may not be aesthetically appealing at first, but if you look at the parameters of what we have for public utility services already that would maybe be at one time claimed an eyesore, I can tell you in my front yard I have a fire plug, and it's somewhat rusty and it's bright yellow, and I don't like looking at it, but I need that. If there's a fire, we need to put fires out in my neighborhood, and I see that every day, and I've begged people if they'd come paint it, and they said that someday they will come paint my fire plug, but it's still an eyesore to me and it bothers me. On the other corner of my front property, I have a large green utility box. So when you look up the front of my beautiful home, you see a rusty fire plug and a green utility box that I don't like, and that's from the electric company. There again, no bushes planted around it. It's a big, ugly box that I don't like in the front of my home. If I would choose to put solar panels in my backyard, I only have 2 neighbors that would see them. Perhaps a churchyard, which I get to see and hear all the noise and all the cars coming and going and all the traffic and their snow bulldozer, and every time it rains, their parking lot floods into my backyard and I get water in my yard and in my basement from that church. I don't complain. It can be an eyesore, but I think if I put 3 or 4 solar panels, I think that'd be the least of my worries, because it would be in my backyard, and there again, I believe my backyard is my business. So I am going to support this tonight. I think that of all the properties in Freeport, how many of them have that perfect southern exposure to put the utility panels on, whether it's the front or the back of their house, or if they choose to yard mount them and save themselves a considerable amount of money, and if they meet all the parameters that we have set within the ordinance to do so, I think they should have the right to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the passage of Ordinance 2019-05?
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Berberay.
Aye.
Clem.
No.
McLanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
And Busker.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-1.
Thank you. Item number 11 is the first reading of Ordinance 2019-06. Could you please read this for the record?
An ordinance of the City of Freeport amending Chapter 236 Accounting and Finance, Section 236.02 of the City Code of Ordinances regarding the fiscal year for the city.
Thank you. Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So when we were looking at this, this is a growing trend among communities to align the fiscal year to the calendar year due to the tax levy and motor fuel tax being aligned to the calendar year, and the tax levy and dealing with fire and police pensions being a big driver. Rochelle has gone to this, and we talked to them how they did it. We've also reached out, and I'm going to ask Director Bucas to talk a little bit about this too. We've reached out to both the auditor and the actuary, and both our auditor and actuary have recommended this, as well as Spear Financial. And with that, I'll turn it over to Director Bucas for his comments on this as well.
I will admit I was a little surprised how many communities in Illinois are actually moving to a calendar year, fiscal year. Most of my experience in Illinois has been with a May 1st fiscal year, but my experience in Wisconsin and Ohio and even Pennsylvania, we were on a calendar year. As far as how it's going to affect our finance department, it will affect it a little bit. Just got to do more work at the end of December, because one of the things I was going to report on tonight was that we're in the process of getting out our 1099s or W-2s, and doing the American or ACA reports that are due for health insurance and everything else. But so we'll just have to add closing out closing out the fiscal year. But we're all in favor in our department. We're all in favor of moving this to a calendar year.
So what we would do is this budget would be 8 months. If this was adopted, this next budget will be 8 months, and will actually be fiscal year 19B is what we're calling it. And then we'll move right into the full 12-month, followed by an audit, and as we go forward directly after that. And then the reporting requirements are, we'll be working with making sure the reporting requirements are done correctly with the state. And so,
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. I've spoke with Manager Crow about this at length as well, as I'm sure most of you have, and I'm sure our senior alderperson, Clem, also realizes in many years past that the council has discussed this, aligning the fiscal year and the calendar year. It's a smart thing. It's so hard to figure out what you're going to do the year ahead, not knowing how to budget appropriately, and other communities have aligned this, and I know we had talked, if we ever brought a city manager on board, he would be able to help us with this one specific thing. Well, more than one thing, sir, but this was one of the things that we talked about, that he would perhaps know how to do this and do it economically. Thank you.
Mayor?
Alderman Keister.
I understand the economical reasons for doing this. Don't have a problem with that. One question I have is with the employees and stuff, their vacation, that kind of stuff is based on fiscal year 1st of May. Is that going to be adjusted to be switched over to a calendar year to where they would have to pick, I don't know if they would pick up days or how it would work, but I guess that's my concern, because there's some benefits and some other stuff that go on fiscal years for employees. It's going to have to be changed as well, I think.
Well, actually, when it comes to vacation and sick time you accumulate basically one day a month. So it doesn't matter where your fiscal year begins or ends. And with vacations, your vacation schedule does start with the fiscal year May 1st. So we may have to look at that a little, make an adjustment. But basically, you can carry over vacation time up to so many hours. So it shouldn't really impact anybody drastically, I should say. Yeah.
the other thing is I've already met with Roxanne and Attorney Sosnowski as we go through the labor contracts. We're going to negotiate the labor contracts so they are aligned to our calendar year, to the change in fiscal year, because right now they're aligned to the May 1st, so we would make that change. We would either give a contract that is adds an additional 4 months on it, or make it shorter. But that's what we would do in those labor contracts, and as we go forward. Then when we go ready to go to negotiate with ASME, the same thing will be occurring with that.
Follow up, Mayor. On the vacation aspect of it, I just kind of wonder if maybe on a one-time deal when we make the transition, some people hold vacation right up until the last minute and then carry over what they can. Maybe one possible solution is there may have to be a one-time deal of allowing extra vacation time to be held over because of the transition, as long as it's used within a certain period of time.
It's possible.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Madam Mayor.
Alderman McClanathan.
That was Alderman Busker beat me to it.
I was
That's
just going
out of the room.
to
There you
make a
go.
motion to move it forward.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Brashaw, to move ordinance 2019-06 on to the next regularly scheduled meeting. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 12, that being the adoption of resolution 2019-01.
Resolution of the City of Freeport authorizing execution and amendment of Downstate Operating Assistance Program DOPE Grant Agreement.
Thank you. Director Zupkoff.
Thank you, Your Honor. The City of Freeport receives Federal Transit Administration 5311 funds and is eligible to apply for funding through the Downstate Operating Assistant Grant. which is the state of Illinois part of the operating assistant grant funding. This application is a yearly grant to receive the grant funding from the state for their portion of the grant, fairly routine on an annual basis. Once this grant agreement is approved, we could begin to receive reimbursement funding on expenditures for this fiscal year. We would ask for approval of this grant and the resolution.
Questions?
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion made by Alderman Keister, seconded by Alderman McClanathan for the adoption of Resolution 2019-01. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll on the adoption?
Brashaw,
Aye.
Keister,
Aye.
Berberet,
Aye.
Clem,
Aye.
McClanathan,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
and Busker.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 13 is the adoption of Resolution 2019-02. Could you please read this?
Resolution of the City of Freeport authorizing and approving an amendment to vehicle lease agreement with the Stevenson County Senior Center doing business as Senior Resource Center.
Director Zupkoff.
Thank you very much. This resolution and amended lease agreement between the city and the Senior Resource Center is for the vehicles used to operate Pretzel City Area Transit. It's necessary because new vehicles have been attained through the IDOT Consolidated Vehicle Procurement Grant Program, and some used vehicles were received from other transit systems through IDOT. So there's a need to update the agreement. While updating the agreement, it was also extended to coincide with the length of the operating contract that we have with the Senior Resource Center. We are glad to have grown the vehicle fleet to 17 vehicles now, including the 3 new Dodge minivans we acquired in the fall and 2 new 12-passenger light-duty buses. 3 of our older minivans have been removed from service, and we are in the process of disposing of them. And we'd ask for approval of this grant and the resolution. Or this agreement and the resolution, sorry.
Mayor,
Alderman Brashaw.
motion to adopt.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Brashaw, seconded by Alderman Keister for the adoption of Resolution 2019-02. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Brashaw,
Aye.
Keister,
Aye.
Berberet,
Aye.
Clem,
Aye.
McClanathan,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
and Busker.
Aye.
That resolution is adopted 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 14 is the adoption of Resolution 2019-03.
Resolution in support of Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, funds for Wagner House redevelopment project.
Thank you. Director Zupkoff.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. You might recall, some background, on October 15th of last year, the council approved an RDA for elevator construction, egress improvements, and ADA accessibility and code compliance improvements at Wagner House. We as a city agreed to reimburse the developer for up to $300,000 of eligible project expenses. That $300,000 needs to be applied for and attained through the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity Community Development Block Grant Revolving Loan Fund Closeout Program. City staff and Wagner House leadership have been gathering documentation to complete the 44-item checklist required for a complete CDBG RLF closeout application since that RDA was approved in October. We would ask for your approval of this resolution. If approved, we intend to submit our completed CDBG RLF application to DCEO by the end of January.
There you go. Questions?
Mayor,
Alderman McClanathan.
as we previously discussed and was discussed at the public hearing, these are grant funds that are going away through the closeout program. Wagner House met to the criteria of it. Other entities have been looked at but haven't met it, and our fallback position for the closeout, if we do not have any other eligible entities in between now and when we have to close out, is to use it for infrastructure, which is an acceptable use under the closeout program parameters, correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
motion to approve.
Second.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Clem.
Andrew, just a question. When do you foresee plans coming forward and things starting and that kind of stuff? Just because this will be a question that will be out there.
Well, they can't begin work on it until until the funds are awarded, and or that's to say also we can't reimburse them for work that they do
Until the,
yeah.
until the actual grant money. So now, once we approve the resolution, this goes up with the grant documents for final approval by DECO. So Department of Economic, the Illinois Department of Economic Opportunity. Once they approve that, then we'll get that money back. So they have all our money. We'll get that money, 300,000 back. And then once we get that money, once they get the work done, they can get it reimbursed. But they cannot get reimbursed for any work that was done prior to us receiving that money back.
Thank you.
Follow up if I could. So theoretically, we could be saying that this is going to be a few months.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
And I understand the process as far as you can't draw up plans, you can't have the architect do anything. Anything you do beforehand would be all on your own, so you don't, okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor made by Alderman Keister, seconded by Alderman Brashaw for the adoption of Resolution 2019-03. If there's no further discussion, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Brashaw,
Aye.
Keister,
Aye.
Berberet,
Aye.
Clem,
Aye.
McClanathan,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
and Busker.
Aye.
That resolution is adopted 8-0.
Item number 15 is the adoption of Resolution 2019-04. Could you please read this?
Resolution of the City of Freeport authorizing and approving an agreement with Freeport Memorial Hospital doing business as FHN Memorial Hospital for use of a fire department staff vehicle for mobile integrated healthcare program.
Thank you. Chief Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. This is, this agreement with Freeport Memorial is in, basically we're trying to get this, the community paramedic program up and running. It's scheduled to start March 4th, but in this agreement allows us to use one of the fire department staff vehicles for its use of the program.
Mayor, make a motion to approve it.
Second.
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
just a real quick question. When you say staff vehicle, this is not a frontline vehicle, but a vehicle you general moving around, or what is the classification of that?
It's going to be one of the Chevrolet Trailblazers that's used just as a staff vehicle at this time. It's not a frontline ambulance, not a fire truck. It's going to be one of the backup cars that we have for a command vehicle, a car that we would use for people to transport back and forth to school, that type of vehicle.
Okay, follow up, Mayor? And for the use of this, is this a gratis thing, or is there a reimbursement from FHN for the use of that and the fuel, or is this something that we are absorbing?
No, actually, when we gave the proposal to FHN in the initial agreements, we talked about fuel costs and maintenance costs, all of which will be reimbursed by FHN.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, did you say that your target date was the 1st of March?
March 4th is the target date at this time.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Clem.
Could you, Chief, could you just run by us, because it's been a while since we first talked about this and came back. Is this, my question would be, we talked about an individual, one individual scheduled to do this, but will he be doing it on his days, you know, like it's day on and then when he's off too and then back on again? Or is this person going to be on a different schedule?
No, there's not going to be a change in any of our schedules, no added personnel. So the way it's going to work is FHN has posted the position on the FHN site. Freeport firefighter, whomever he or she may be, would apply. Then they would have an interview process of which I would be a part of, and then we'll select that person based on their education experience, whatnot. Then that person will go through some training, hopefully in February, to go for the March 4th go date that we're planning on at this point. And that would be with this complex care manager also that FHN will have. And this would be then on their days off around their fire department schedule, so that it doesn't have any impact on daily operations.
And they're actually going to be paid by FHN for those days off. So they fall under the FHN insurance and all that for that period of time.
Mayor?
Alderman Keister.
One final question, Chief, just because this has been going on for a while for the general public and for some of our information. Can you give a brief explanation of exactly what they'll be doing out there and what this program is?
What the criteria is going to be made available from FHN to address post-discharge of emergency room patients. So, you know, obviously it's confidential information, but FHN will select the patients that they think would get the best use out of this program. Probably around 10 would be a good gauge of how many patients that we would have at one time, and they would anywhere from 6 to 10 weeks will be in this program. What we'll do, we'll go to the house, we'll take a look at what are their living conditions, are they taking care of their nutrition, how are they managing their medications, all those things that play into readmissions, all those type of issues that create additional 911 calls. And so if we can change the way that people are comfortable managing their lives and medications in their home, we hope that will transition into reduce costs not only for the fire department, but for FHN itself.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Mayor.
Alderman Ross.
Yes, Chief Allen. What about when the fireman's off, vacation time, so on?
And those questions have come up, and those we're going to work with FHN on that. So if people will have vacation time, they'll have to schedule that along, just like they would a personal job that they would have on their days off now. Because we have a lot of our firefighters that do work on their days off, and it'd be no different than that. You know, they may want to work on the days that they're on vacation from the fire department, but it's a separate employment through FHN. So those are all details that they would have to schedule and work through FHN on.
Okay, follow-up, Mayor. Well, have you considered a backup fireman?
Yeah, so let's say we have a structure fire similar to what we had downtown over the summer, a larger structure fire. They would get called back just like everybody else would. There are times, though, that even people on their days off are tied up with something immediately and couldn't come in right away. That could be the case. I mean, if they're with a patient, they couldn't just immediately leave. But there again, we don't pay them on their days off to be available. We call them in hopes that they're available. So it wouldn't work any different than somebody having a day off job.
Are you talking about the FHN?
Yeah, I was speaking of the FHN
Okay.
backup fireman, just in case the other one becomes ill or something like that.
That really falls on what FHN wants to do.
Correct. That's correct.
So.
Okay, so they have looked into it, and you know.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason we're stepping into this on a part-time basis instead of jumping in full. We want to see how the program's gonna go. We thought it'd be prudent to kind of move into it slowly, and so we do feel that there's going to be a need, and maybe the need is bigger than what we can provide with just a part-time person. But as it sits right now, we're going to address these 10 patients. You know, if the volume of patients was higher, it'd be harder for that person if they were sick or had something else planned on their day off to address that large volume of patients. But that's why we're going into a part-time to see exactly what, it is a pilot program, so we're going to try to evaluate all these little nuances, because there could be other things that come up too that we hadn't thought of.
Okay, yeah, because I totally think it's an awesome idea, and I totally support it. I mean, I think it's just great where you can just have somebody go out and do that, because that's what you call looking forward, moving forward.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor made by Alderman Parker, seconded by Alderman Busker for the adoption of Resolution 2019-04. Unless there's further discussion, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Berberay.
Aye.
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
And Busker.
Aye.
And that resolution is adopted 8-0.
Item number 16 is the adoption of Resolution 2019-05. Could you please read this?
Resolution authorizing and approving 2019 motor fuel tax under number 19-00000-00-GM.
Director Carr.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So every year for us to use these funds for maintenance items, we have to pass this resolution. So it's done every year. This year we're going to pass, we're putting in for $400 in this original resolution. I don't see us getting there, but it kind of gives us 400,000.
That makes more sense.
One truckload of patch. No. So this will cover the asphalt that we use to pave, that our street crews will use, our pavement patch, our surface course rock, and then also some chip seal maintenance costs as well.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made on the floor by Alderman Parker, seconded by Alderman Busker for the adoption of Resolution 2019-05. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Berberet.
Aye.
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
And Busker.
Aye.
That passes 8-0.
And item number 17 is the adoption of Resolution 2019-06.
Resolution of the City of Freeport authorizing and approving a power purchase agreement with KPH IL8 LLC regarding solar generated electric energy at the wastewater treatment plant.
Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this has been an ongoing discussion with Director Kropansky, myself, Attorney Zito with Keystone about doing a power purchase agreement. What they will do is actually, I think it's, they're putting a 2.4 megawatt site. I shouldn't say I think. They are putting it out at the wastewater treatment facility. They would sell us power. It'll off that solar site, and will save us anywhere from 40 to 60% of our cost of our power. They additionally purchase power from ComEd, and we buy all of the power from them. This is a savings. They've already gotten the interconnection. This sets up the payment, and basically over the first 15 years, we'll be paying them less than what we're paying for energy today. And they built into this contract is an increase every year in what they anticipate based upon past increases. And year 15, that's when they believe we'll be crossing that threshold, but they believe the power will, we're currently paying today, but they believe power will become more expensive in the future. The layout of the plan has been reviewed by both Director Carr and Director Kropansky, and they, as well as they're on site, and they are also been working with Fair Graham out at the site to go forward. So this is the next step in this agreement. We brought the resolution originally to start this negotiation back with you, I think 5 months ago. We've reached this agreement, and we are recommending approval of this resolution.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. Manager Crowe, I'm assuming ComEd is still the carrier of the electric, or that takes in the energy from the solar panels, and then we in turn will purchase some of the electric back from this company that is doing the panels, correct?
That's correct.
And you, as you said, this is less than what we pay for energy today. Do you know a percentage of cost savings approximately?
So based upon what their calculations are, if we started next year, because they figure it'll take a year to get the panels, start next year, we'll be at 60% savings.
Wow. Thank you.
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor made by Alderman Keister, seconded by Alderman Brashaw on the adoption of Resolution 2019-06. Is there any further discussion?
Mayor.
Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you. I just one additional question on it, and it related to the clause regarding relocation. Do we have any plans on relocating that plants in the near future?
I'll let,
Well, let's see, okay, over at the Hancock plant, we're looking to go and have 5 phases of construction over the next 40 years, so our footprint is gonna stay there for a good long time, so.
So it's anticipated that this relocation clause will probably never come into effect?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Clem.
just a follow-up, Tom, the plant there is probably one of the biggest users in the city of Freeport, correct? On kind of all the big pumps, that kind of stuff?
Yes, between the water plant and the wastewater plant most assuredly when there's wet weather events. And we've already been at that site for the last 81 years.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no further discussion, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the adoption of Resolution 2019-06?
Brashma,
Aye.
Keister,
Aye.
Berberay,
Aye.
Clem,
Aye.
McClanathan, Ross, Parker,
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
That resolution is adopted 8-0.
Item number 18 is the approval of body-worn camera quotes. Chief.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I came before you tonight with 3 different options. We have come to the end of our ViView body-worn camera contract, so we figured it was a good time to take a look at that. So the 3 options that we have is staying with ViView is option A. That's a viable option. The ViView type of camera was really at the time one of the best options that we had. It was affordable, yet it provided the kind of service that we were looking for. One thing that made it affordable, we platooned the camera, meaning we had a bank of 16 cameras, and we could take it off the dock and assign that camera to that particular officer, and then he would go out and wear that night. Then he would come in and he would put it back in the dock, and it would download and it would save that information. And we were happy with that. We worked through ViView on a lot of different problems and helped them develop their camera. The other option would be Axon, and Axon is a company that Taser owns. And Axon, it's a little bit better, I think, quality of camera. It's a little bit more rugged. But the one thing with Axon, instead of a docking station, everybody would have a camera, and they have that license for that camera. They sell these licensees. So in order to view that, you have to purchase a license. So it was, I can't wear Patrolman B's camera. We would all have our own, and so that's pretty cost effective or ineffective. So that particular option, that's option B, and that was around $29,000 just for year 1, and then that drops to $20,000 in year 2, and so on and so forth. The third option I come before you is option C, and that's really the best blend of both of these. It's called G-Tech, and we've been kind of keeping our eye on this company for the last couple of years through different conferences and stuff that we've been at. But it, again, allows us to platoon these cameras. City Manager Crowell and I was in my office just the other day looking at the differences. It's a quality of camera. It's about maybe just a little bit smaller than the ViView, and it again allows us to platoon the cameras. It allows us to have the protection that we need. This is all storage in the cloud, just like it's been before. Instead of renting these cameras like we did with ViView, we will be purchasing these cameras. The first year, $11,000. The second year, $11,000. Then there are going to be our cameras. That includes a 2-year warranty with that. Then for year 3, then we're just paying for cloud storage, and that's about $4,800 a year just to have the cloud storage available to us. So option C would be cost savings going forward, It gives the transparency that we want for our police officers to have out there. And I would move forward with the recommendation that we go with option C, which would be the G-Tech camera in their system.
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
just out of curiosity, with the company you've got right now, there's film storage in their cloud system. Are we gonna have to continue to pay for that, or can that be transferred into the system that if we went to another system, it would be transferred into that system?
That's a great question. And what we have is we've got a certain amount. We've got about 7 terabytes of storage that's with ViView, they're holding in their cloud. That's our storage. That's storage that we can't get rid of. Those are arrests. Those are use of force incidents. Those would not be lost. So we talked with the IT personnel, and to purchase a 10 terabyte hard drive would be about $300. So we could purchase that hard drive, and that's what that's for, and we would just transfer that storage down there to that. Again, we would have that forever.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Bradshaw.
thank you. With your option C, which is G-Tech, which does sound the most viable, you mentioned that after year 2, which basically be year 3, cloud storage is only $4,800 per year. But what I don't see is that cloud storage included in the cost for year 1 and 2, a part of that $11,843, or is the $4,800 in additional to the?
No, it's included with that cost.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Alderman Ross.
Yes, Chief. How is the clarity and durability of this camera compared to the others?
Right. It's the quality of picture is really good. And it depends on, just like any of your digital cameras. If I want to, I can make the quality of my picture on my iPhone much. If I really clear, then it's going to use more storage. But we found this where it's a good quality picture, as just as well as our other ones that we've been using, with set on like medium setting at all. So. And they're very durable. I think that we're going to have less problems with the port system when we dock those cameras. So it's I would say very good.
Chief, you didn't talk about the 3 settings that the camera has.
Yeah, it's got 3 settings. You just can flip those settings. They would be and we can adjust those settings. So if it's a domestic situation, we can turn that, and that will automatically tag that as domestic situation, use of force situation. Maybe it's a DUI. So what we can do is we can label those particular those videos, but we can also go in there with the master setting and change those to whatever ones we're using most.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor.
Actually, Alderman Parker.
Quick question, is there much training from the ones you have now to the new ones, or they run about the same?
It's pretty much the same. It's really, I think the guys all like them. They enjoy having the cameras with them. That gives them a sense of a level of protection, and so there really will be just some minor as far as turn them on or off, or some back storage about how we're going to label some of the metadata that they develop from those systems.
They're actually easier to turn on. Chief and I were having a discussion on personnel, and we accidentally turned it on.
Yeah, turned it on. So but they're pretty much very very similar. They really are.
Mayor, follow. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Clem.
Question. I know before when you looked at cameras, there was a considerable amount of discussion at that time regarding the way the software worked and the way that you could take in, how do I want to say it, if you've gotten arrested, it camouflages the people that you don't want to see. It's, as far as faces.
Right, it's a redaction software. This comes with the redaction software. Just like anything technology, 3 years, they've really come a long way in that, and this, that particular software comes with these things, and so it's, you know, those processes become easier and easier as we move forward.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Brashaw.
for clarification, that motion for approval was for the GTEC cameras, correct?
Yeah, option, third option, the one
Third
that you
option.
recommended.
Yep.
Okay, I didn't hear that. Thank you.
Mayor?
Alderman Keister.
One final, well, actually a two-part question, Chief. As you said, in 2 years, the cameras would be owned by the police department. I'm presuming that like the portable radios and stuff, there are batteries and other things that need to be replaced on that and stuff, and at that time would be our responsibility. So do you have a possible anticipated cost on that and how you're gonna cover that? And any possible maintenance that need to be done on them at that time?
Well, they come with a warranty, and I'm sure that there's gonna be some things that come up as they go on. So after 2 years, with the 2 years, it's like a bumper-to-bumper warranty. But there probably will be some things that come up from time to time that we'll have to either take out of our budget or, you know, replace a camera here or there. But the cameras itself aren't, you know, incredibly expensive. I think that we can see that most of the expense is from the storage itself. So I think that's where the big cost is going to be, is with the storage.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Okay, so before you, council, is a motion made by Alderman Parker, seconded by Alderman Ross for the approval of the quotes concerning option C. Unless there's any further discussion, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Brashaw,
Aye.
Keister,
Aye.
Berberay,
Aye.
Clem,
Aye.
McClanathan,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
and Busker.
Aye.
That motion is approved, 8-0.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to reports of department heads. Finance.
Thank you, Your Honor. I really have nothing to report tonight.
Thank you. Community development.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a couple of things. First, want to let you know the comprehensive plan kickoff meeting with Ratio has been scheduled. It's going to take place Thursday, January 31st at 6 p.m. here at City Hall. The Planning Commission, as well as staff, as well as the advisory committee, which are community members that are helping us throughout this planning process, will be there. And some of the topics that will be covered that night are a presentation on the comprehensive plan process, a lessons learned discussion about past plans and reports, interactive exercises to better understand community priorities, discussion about project schedule and project milestones, integration with the Park District Master Plan, and project next steps. Also wanted to let you know our department issued Harbor Freight their certificate of occupancy today, and they are planning to open for business tomorrow.
Very good.
Thank you very much. We love that kind of news. Public Works.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Been working pretty closely in the last couple weeks with our right-of-way negotiator for the Peck Path. We're down to one property left. He's had several meetings with him, and they don't seem to pan out. But we're pretty confident that we're going to have that acquired and all the paperwork to IDOT in time to get that project moving forward. We have completed and finished and sent our 2018 MFT maintenance paperwork to IDOT. We're working on getting the 2019 paperwork together. And then there is a potential for bad weather tonight and also Friday night, so I do ask that the traveling public please drive safely and realize that slick roads are still slick roads even if they have salt on them.
Thank you. Fire.
Thank you, Mayor. Just an update on our recruit testing. We had 37 applicants. On Saturday, we had 30 show up. We had 7 no-shows. And then we're going to continue forward with the process. We should have a list we're hoping up by in April. We'll have an active list of new recruits at that time. And I think that Barclay wants to talk a little bit about a basketball game Saturday.
All right, police.
Okay. Yes, we're going to be having our, is it our third annual Battle of the Badges this Saturday at Emmanuel Lutheran Church. The kids shoot around will start at 1 o'clock, and then we'll actually have tip-off, I think, at 2 o'clock. Alderman Parker, are you officiating? Have anybody contacted you?
No, they haven't.
Okay.
I don't think I could run up.
Okay,
down the court
okay.
anymore. Thanks anyway.
Well, I don't think there'll be a whole lot of running hard down the court, but we'll see. But it's a good time. It really is. It's a good time for everybody. So encourage everybody to come on out. We're taking donations. The donations this year is for the Children's Hands-On Museum of Northwest Illinois. It's in the Lincoln Mall, so it goes for a good cause.
Quick question for Todd. I will be there. If you need any help, just mention
Right.
it. I will be there.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Just to what Director Carr talked about, slow down. I encourage everybody to slow down a little bit with the slick roads. Just because you got four-wheel drive, that doesn't help you stop at all. So increase the distance a little bit, people in front of you, and so slow down, please. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Water and sewer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I sort of want to go and discuss a little bit about the weather in the near term here, next week and all that. It's anticipated highs will be in the teens with lows to be in the single digits, and at this time of year, if there's a possibility of having frozen, service lines, faucets and such, so I would suggest to go and crack a faucet to then have water moving so it doesn't freeze. And around this time last year, I had a little memo on the website. I'll get with the IT director to make sure it's on the new website as to frequently ask questions or things to do as far as when we're in temperatures that we expect to see later this week and next week.
Thank you. IT.
Thank you. I'll check on that. Speaking of the website, since we last met before the holidays, I've added interactive maps to the homepage. So there's one for your ward. You can go on, search your property, and find out what ward you're in. If you click on it, you can see a picture of your alderman. Also, there's a zoning map where you can see information like obviously zoning, but also if you're in the floodplain and TIF districts. Works good on a tablet or a phone, so feel free to check it out there. And the web address is cityoffreeport.org. Thanks.
Thank you. Library.
Good evening. I'll make it short and sweet. So we started the first week of January with our lectures in American history, and we're averaging about 50 people plus a week attending those. So tomorrow night is our next one. It's at 6:30 p.m. and Eric Welch is discussing John Bingham, the 14th Amendment, and the Third United States Constitution. So if you're interested in that, please join us. We also announced our book title that we are reading. As you can see in front of you, I gave you a book of this year's community read. We are calling it the NEA Big Read 2019, commonly known as One Book, One Freeport. The book is titled The Late Homecomer by Kao Kalia Yang, and I apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly. We'll have our book giveaway this Saturday, but it's before your basketball game, so you can still do both if you want, but you guys already have copies. And then our grand kickoff event is Saturday, February 2nd, and a story time and craft at 10 a.m. and a special performance from the Lao American Organization of Elgin. Well, they'll be doing cultural dancing, and they're a very excited troupe, so it should be very interesting. And we hope to see you at some of our events. Thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you. And then city manager report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Turn my mic on. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the Boys Club and Girls Club on Sunday evening at 5 p.m. is doing a celebration of Martin Luther King. They have a guest speaker coming in from Beloit, and you're all invited to the event. Air One has moved out of the main hangars that they were in. We still have 3 of their helicopters, but they are been relocated. The other equipment has been taken over by the state and transferred to another community.
And then Heritage Arrow officially opened their doors as of the 2nd of January, bringing us 10 new jobs and a new business out there. And we're seeing an increase in volume at the airport. So, and then the final thing is a reminder, Monday is a holiday. It's Martin Luther King Day. It's Day of Service, and a National Day of Service. And Tuesday will be the Committee of the Whole here. So that's all I've got.
And that's all I had. So we'll move on to Alderman Bradshaw
I have no news this evening, thank you.
and Alderman Keister.
Yes, thank you. Just real quickly, Manager Crowe, on your discussion of Air One, my hangar is right next to their building, and I had an opportunity to talk to several of them, and they seem to be very happy with the facilities that are available to them. And I've seen several antique warbirds fly in there for maintenance and stuff in the past few days. So yeah, I think it's going to be quite successful. And one other thing too, when we're talking about two things when we're talking about cold weather and icy roads. Number one, with the cold weather coming up, pet owners, don't leave your pets outside in that kind of weather. It's no better for them than it is for you. Number two, with the slippery roads, and unfortunately I found this out by experience, if you haven't checked your tires for winter yet, please go ahead and do so. Don't find out by surprise like I did on an icy road that the tires are not as good as you thought they were.
Alderman Berberet.
Nothing, sir.
Alderman Clem.
Just want to announce to the people in the first ward, we will be changing the date of the neighborhood watch simply because of some complications. I won't be able to be there, and we're going to take a look at a couple dates, and I'll email those out.
Thank you. Alderman McClanathan.
Nothing further, thank you.
Alderman Ross.
Yes, I'd like to basically advise the residents of the 3rd Ward east of the river of the upcoming seminar that's going to be held at the St. Paul Missionary Baptist Church at 6 p.m. this Wednesday. So if you live in that area, it would be nice to show up. And if you have questions or concerns, there's going to be a list of people. Manager Kroll will be there, myself, Andrew. It's going to be a very good list of people with questions and answers for you. So please attend. And myself.
Alderman Parker.
Nothing.
You and Alderman Busker.
Just a reminder for the 5th Ward Neighborhood Watch meeting tomorrow night at 6 o'clock at the First Church of the Nazarene at Carroll and Empire. And also just want to remind everyone to please remove your cars from the street during the snow so the plows can get around and do their jobs, and it'll make it easier for us all to drive.
All right, thank you. Which leads us to item number 23, which is public comment. Tommy.
Tabago, what's up about that oak? They got some of it down or what?
They got what?
The city hall they
Yeah,
put?
so notice it. It's good, I told you.
They got to more or that's it?
Well, yeah, they gotta get all them bricks out of there.
And Joey Miller, you did a good job for the mayor, and you and Noah Cole, we did a good job everything you do.
Well, thank you, Tommy. We appreciate that.
And committee about, I hear the Hall of Faith was open tomorrow.
Yes, that's right.
I clap my hand when you say something about it.
Thanks. I appreciate that, Tommy.
Any other public comments, words of wisdom from our pastor that I stood up?
Prayers?
Okay. Well, unless there are any other public comments, I will take a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Motion made by Parker, seconded by Busker. All those in favor for adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Have a good evening.